Welcome to Global Investment Voice, your premier podcast for diving deep into the world of investment migration. Are you dreaming of a second or third passport? Then join us as we traverse the globe, exploring the ins and outs of the U.S. EB-5 immigrant investor visa, uncover the secrets of golden visas, and delve into the many residency and citizenship by investment programs. Each episode is packed with exclusive insights from top industry experts. Whether you're an investor, developer, or a visionary entrepreneur, we're here to guide you through the complexities of global investment migration. And who better to navigate this journey with than your hosts, the dynamic legal duo of this industry, Mona Shah and Rebecca Singh. Plus, hear directly from a lineup of global investment migration leaders. So, buckle up and tune in to Global Investment Voice, where your global investment journey begins and expands.
Hi, everyone. Picture this. You're sipping espresso at a cafe in Marbella. Laptop is open, finishing up a presentation for your New York-based employer, all the while enjoying 300 days of sunshine a year, paying a fraction of what you'd spend on rent back home. Think about it. 5 years ago, this scenario would have either required early retirement or a trust fund. Today, it just requires a digital nomad visa and a decent Wi-Fi connection. Today, we're speaking with Iliana Oris Valiente from the Flexible Class. Iliana is the founder of the Flexible Class, a movement designed for global citizens who blend work and travel across multiple home bases. She spends her days as an executive in the corporate world, and she's also a venture capital investor and a board member, a published author, and a frequent speaker featured in the Financial Times all the way to Bloomberg. Welcome, Iliana.
Hello, and thank you so much for having me today.
So what do you think of my little sort of scenario at the beginning, that you're sipping espresso in a cafe in Marbella? Is that representative?
It absolutely is. I might even add a paella lunch plate, which I was actually enjoying in Marbella a couple of months ago, to the picture.
And where in the world are you speaking from today?
I'm currently in Italy, in a small alpine town called Tirano, right across the border from Switzerland, as I'm gearing up to head over to Davos this year.
Oh, wonderful. And you are Canadian by citizenship and by birth?
I am Canadian by citizenship, and I'm actually Russian and Cuban by origin. So I have quite the collection of backgrounds, if you will.
Well, welcome to Global Investment Voice. I know you're going to be a frequent speaker with us. But first of all, our listeners are intrigued. What are we talking about when we talk about the flexible class and nomad visas? You know, we know what we're talking about, but why don't you explain to our audience?
Absolutely. So I've been very closely tracking this emerging trend of people who are realizing that if they are working remotely, even for a fraction of the time from their home office, they're starting to ask the question of, why am I limited to working in the home office in the city that I am based in, or even in the country that I'm based in? And that very simple question has spawned this massive explosion of a trend of digital nomads and citizens of the world, people who are questioning all of those foundational assumptions, and they're picking and choosing places from which they are working and temporarily living in the same way that someone might be choosing a coffee shop to go explore for the week.
You know, you're so right. I was just speaking with a colleague, and I couldn't get a hold of her, or later on. And then I asked her, where is she? She said, oh, we're in France. I said, in France? You're working from France right now? She said, yeah, we work remotely, so we thought we would head over here. So yeah, it is happening. But who do you see primarily as doing this? Are you seeing Canadians do this? Is it just people of the world?
So there are two pieces to this. There is the stereotype of who people imagine is a digital nomad, and then there's the reality. Let me start with busting the myth. The myth that a digital nomad is a 22-year-old backpacker that's traveling through Bali, living on a shoestring budget because their entire earning for the year is, call it $15,000 per year. That is actually really far from the current picture And the current reality of people who are living this lifestyle is actually predominantly millennials and increasingly Gen Z. But the current average income of a person living this lifestyle is over 120,000 US dollars. And the average age is 35 plus.
That actually encompasses a lot of people. I mean, that's not a huge salary for US standards for 120. So you're talking about quite a considerable amount of people.
Exactly. And the people who are doing the lifestyle right now do come from countries that predominantly have easy travel, if you will. So Canada is at the top of the list. The US is really high up there. About 18 million Americans identify as digital nomads. Out of the 40 million plus people globally who identify with that label.
So what is the difference, though, between a remote worker and a digital nomad worker?
Mm-hmm. So a digital nomad worker is someone who is working internationally, typically, and usually is following the actual rule set in that country where they have applied and have secured a proper visa that gives them the option of working in that place, as opposed to operating in more of the gray zone of traveling to a place where their passport allows them to be on more of a tourist type basis, and then they just happen to be doing their work from that location remotely. But a remote worker could also be a person that's working still within their home country, just from a different state or a different province or a different city.
And you have set up this flexible class movement. Is it a movement? Is it a company? Can you explain a little more?
So the flexible class is a movement, and think of it as a community of people who have chosen to set up 2, 3, or more home bases for themselves around the world. These aren't people that are picking up and moving every single month in search of a new country. They tend to fall a little bit closer into the slow nomad category, where they're spending anywhere from 3 to 12 months in a location, but they really want to establish roots in that location, which means they're looking for housing that is suitable, that has a strong Wi-Fi connection, that has a setup that enables them to, actually do their work and pursue their business objectives. They're certainly not tourists who are traveling on a whim. They secure the legal right to live and to work somewhere. And so they're navigating all of the additional complexity that comes, as you can imagine, from an immigration standpoint, in a taxation standpoint, and they care about, basic things like, do I have the right health coverage and insurance as you live this global lifestyle? So I've been building a community of people that live this way for the past couple of years and connecting them with products and services that are designed to make that lifestyle easier. So over the past little bit, we've been onboarding all sorts of partners into a marketplace of sorts that our members are then able to access. I'm essentially streamlining people's work lives and life lives so that they're not spending an inordinate amount of time making their life administration work. It's not fun.
It sounds absolutely fascinating. And it's so 2026, I would say.
Yes.
But, as I said right from the outset, 5 years ago, you wouldn't have been able to do this. But let me ask you, I want to ask you so many questions about your program, your platform rather. Before I go any further though, we've just entered into 2026. There's so much happening in the world right now. What do you see as the future of the Nomad Visa, at least this year? Do you see it growing with all of the unrest?
Oh, I definitely see it growing. You have countries that have realized that this global citizen population is actually a great way to boost their economic growth profile. And so countries are now starting to compete for talent by rolling out the red carpet. In fact, there are over 75 countries now that offer some flavor of a digital nomad or a golden passport type of program. And to your point about, 5 years ago, this would have been unfathomable. The vast majority of these programs, like 90% of these programs, were launched after 2020.
Yeah. Yeah. That's pretty, that seems to be the way forward right now. I think COVID really was the catalyst for change for so many people.
It was because it pushed you from working in an office as the standard expectation to people suddenly being thrust to working entirely from home. Obviously, it doesn't work for every single occupation. You're not going to do virtual plumbing, for instance, but for although, with metaverse and virtual reality headsets, I have seen some amazing applications of virtual reality to train hospital workers on certain medical equipment operation without them having to learn on an actual physical machine. So the lines are definitely blurring, but for the most part, this is limited to people who are able to work either fully or at least partially remotely. And we're seeing a lot of people who will go live somewhere else for, call it, 3 months at a time, come back to their main home base, have meetings, have team workshops, have the strategy sessions, have a team offsite retreat, and then continue their global adventures and boomerang back into their home location. There's so many different permutations of people who are saying, wait a second, why am I living life? Why am I working by following the standard societal conveyor belt, if you will, of
Mm,
expectations?
yeah. Well, here's my thing though. I would have thought it was the young, maybe the entrepreneur, but somebody who's single or maybe newly married. I wouldn't have seen, for example, any couple who have children wanting to do this. Do you have anyone like that in your community?
Oh, yes, we do. In fact, a large number of the people living this lifestyle are partnered and or have children. Now, it's a lot easier to travel freely when the children are really small before they hit school age. But even for school age children, we're now starting to see new types of life infrastructure that is emerging. I'll give you an example. Boundless Life is a private school network, essentially, that has a series of schools in Portugal, in Greece, in Bali. They're opening up a location. They're just opening up a location in Japan. And the idea is that these schools offer a curriculum that is modular, which means you commit to at least 2 months in a location. And after those 2 months, you can move the family to one of the sister schools, and the children, they don't skip a beat with the curriculum. The curriculum continues. And what's so cool about this, Mona, is that this allows a different type of teacher to actually participate in the teaching profession.
I love it because then you're really exposing your child to the world. It's a completely different exposure to what they would get in a primary school
Exactly.
somewhere.
And they get to meet other children who have parents who have similar perspectives. And so you have your group of friends that you see when you're in Greece. You have your group of friends that you see when you're in Lisbon, and so on and so forth.
Can I ask you, though, we talk about Europe a lot. Are you seeing people move into what we feel is going to be the new hotspot, which is Latin America?
Yes, very much so. So Mexico City has been considered one of the top digital nomad destinations, and it's still there. However, we're starting to see some concern from the local population around overcrowding, gentrification, costs increasing, which is fair and actually very common. This is a situation that's existed for as long as humans have been migrating around the planet. But we do see additional movement in Brazil that has come out to the radar, in addition to Argentina and Colombia as the two stalwarts in Latin America.
Fascinating. Well, we are going to discuss this a lot more, but I do want to ask you why? Why? Actually, what sparked the idea? What made you actually come into this whole arena?
So this starts with a personal story, actually. I was in Barbados and I was there on a short little girls' trip over the holidays. Of course, I had my computer with me because I always travel with my computer. And partway through that vacation, COVID lockdowns part two happened, and Canada went back into a lockdown. And I sat there thinking to myself, I could get on a plane as I'm scheduled, fly back home, and then be in lockdown, or I could remain in Barbados where everything is open, it's totally under control, and I'll just work remotely. And the logical choice was I'm going to stay here and work remotely. And one of the days I was sitting in a local coffee shop and getting my work done, and I realized that the woman next to me in a sundress was very clearly on a work call. She was negotiating some sort of sale. And a couple tables over was a man that was very visibly coding. And I'm a systems thinker. I look at patterns, and it sparked this question in my mind of who are these people and what are they doing? Because they don't look like they're on vacation. They look like they're working, and it doesn't seem like this is a one-off occurrence. This seems like it's part of their life. And so me being the mini investigative journalist that I am at heart, I started to strike up conversations with these people and ask, who are you? What are you doing here? And eventually one of them said, oh, I'm a digital nomad. And that was the first time I had heard the term. This is 2021, early January. And I thought to myself, a what? And why? And why would anyone live this lifestyle that seems so fringe? So two things happened simultaneously in that handful of week period that I was stranded in Barbados. One, I started to think about my own life and whether this was a label I would want to apply to myself, given that I've been a global citizen my entire life. I've lived internationally, worked internationally, traveled extensively for many, many years, just without this label that I had stumbled onto later on. But the second thing it triggered was this curiosity around this demographic. Who are the people who live this way? Why do they live this way? What do they need in order to work and actually make their lifestyles function? And that spawned a research project that has been ongoing for years, where I have conducted hundreds of interviews. I've come up with surveys that had been done by thousands of people at this point in time. And to answer your question, why, Mona, there's actually a psychographic of people who have a certain set of core personality preferences that are far more likely to live this global citizen lifestyle than others. And it correlates to a really high need for novelty and a very low need for resources in their life in order for them to feel secure, established, and to thrive. And there's a very specific cohort of the population that actually embraces this lifestyle or is far more likely to embrace this lifestyle. And I've created a whole new personality preference theory called the potted plant theory to cover that, which I'm sure we can get into in a later episode.
Oh, yeah. Well, there's so much to talk about. But before I let you go, Iliana, are you seeing older people come into this community, or is it really just the younger generation?
Age is not a factor, which is fascinating. I'll give you two examples.
Love that. I love that sentence. Yeah, that's going to be my motto now for this year.
Hey, with longevity, we are all going to live to 120 plus. So we have a lot of life left. No, but really, there are all sorts of people who are hitting retirement age, whose children are leaving the home and they're finding themselves as empty nesters, who say things like, Iliana, if I had had this lifestyle possible 20, 30 years ago before I had children, I may have made different life decisions. But it really wasn't an option for them at the time. And so they're making up for lost time.
There is so much to discuss. We're at the end of this podcast, and we look forward to having you back again, Iliana. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
And that's a wrap on today's episode of Global Investment Voice. A huge thank you to all our listeners for tuning in and sharing this journey with us. Curious about unlocking the potential of global migration and citizenship? Make sure to visit us online at mshallah.com and globalinvestmentvoice.com. Dive into our extensive library of podcast episodes. Stay ahead with the latest in migration news by signing up for our insider newsletter. Don't forget to connect with us on social media. Find us on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook to keep the conversation going. Remember, the insights shared in our podcast are for informational purposes only, so please seek tailored legal, financial, or investment advice where needed. Thanks again for listening, and until next time, Keep investing smart and living well with Global Investment Voice. We'll see you on the next episode.